Good morning. Yeah, not for him. Alrighty, let's get started. Good morning, everybody. In a quiet way. Maybe you start introducing yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nico Luedemann. I'm a consultant from Germany, mainly focusing on infrastructure optimization and virtualization technologies. Been doing it for like, I think, 17, 18 years or so. And yeah, I'm hoping to give you a nice show this morning. Thanks for coming. And yeah.
Okay, my name is Tritsch. I work for Absence as a director of technical community. And well, I'm a 12-time BriForum speaker. I wasn't able to make it to Chicago last year because I went scuba diving with my son, so I promised him for such a long time, so I had to miss that one. Well, there's one thing that you should know because it's the first time that we do a presentation together. And having two German presenters here, that does mean it's not going to be funny. We don't get the concept of humor. So sorry about that. But without any further ado, we will go through our session, through the agenda. And we want to talk about things around what Microsoft calls RemoteApp, what Citrix calls published applications, seamless windows. And the reason for that is I personally believe that the desktop, the traditional desktop as we know it today, may be dead in the future. But Windows applications may not be dead. And I really liked it when Brian said in his opening that if there is a catastrophe on Earth, there will be a couple of things that survive. And among them, there will be Windows applications. And this is our, I may speak for you as well, yep. This is our belief that this is going to be the case for a long time. So we're going to go through the concepts of these seamless applications. And well, we will define some success criteria. And throughout our session, we will go through some of those criteria in order to be able to compare things in the end. Do not expect that we will have like a chart with numbers which says this is a 1, this is a 5, this is a 2, this is a something. This is not the goal of this session. It's rather that we want to show you what is possible today, what are the differences, what is the technology that's going to be available in the future. Yeah. Anything to add here?
No, actually, I think it's as Brian said this morning, it's not about the protocols only, but it's also about the management architecture, the underlying concepts, scalability, and so on and so on. And so this is kind of the success criteria metrics we build to give you a kind of feeling where the things could go in the future.
Good. For all who may not know what seamless applications are, it's the applications that are integrated into a client's desktop without the Windows desktop, the remote Windows desktop, being visible. Microsoft uses a funny term for that. I will refer to that later. But there's another thing with Microsoft. There is no official licensing model for Windows applications, seamless Windows applications delivered from the cloud. So this is the reason why you cannot get that today from a Windows desktop. There are licensing agreements, like SPLA licensing agreements, where you can publish applications from a terminal server infrastructure or remote desktop session host environment, as it is called today. But if you want to have a full Windows 7 or Windows 8 virtual machine running in the cloud and deliver your applications from there, it's not possible from a legal perspective. Technically, it is. So this is very important to note. But Microsoft may want to change that. And there is an article out there that states that Microsoft will change the licensing model and will provide that kind of service from the cloud, which is interesting news. If you ask Microsoft about that, you will only get one comment. We do not comment speculations. So I have no idea where Mary Jo got this information from. But it's interesting because it made it into the sort of headlines in the internet. And this is interesting. So what is your feeling? How long is it going to take until the desktop is going to disappear? Is it going to disappear?
I'm not quite sure about it. I think it's dependent on the customer situation. I don't know how many of the customers are using virtualization technology on the desktop currently, but I think it's evolving. It's getting more and more to on the one side to the corporate customers, and on the other hand to like the consumerization part of it. If you look at, for example, gamification of certain things or cloud-based gaming, these are mainly concepts coming from desktop virtualization or application virtualization. So I think it's getting more and more to the mainstream.
I mean, the one thing that really is interesting for me to note is Nvidia. They are also a sponsor out here. They gave me one of their new grid cards for testing, and it's amazing. I mean, it's several thousand euro, dollar, pound. It's definitely more expensive than the computer that you buy. And Brian showed a picture of it, and I don't know if you noted it. You buy a $6,000 graphic card, and it comes without an output. So if you plug it into your machine, you don't know where to connect your monitor to. And if you have a modern BIOS, the BIOS interprets plug-in of a graphic card as, hey, I don't need the internal GPU anymore. So the GPU that lives on the CPU is deactivated. So you're sitting in front of the screen, you plug in this card, you boot the machine, and your monitor stays black. So you have to reconfigure the BIOS to say, no matter what I plug in, please use the internal graphics card or the graphics functionality of the CPU. But that shows you that Nvidia is heavily investing into the server side of things. And that means the gamification, what you mentioned, is something that they're clearly addressing with that. So they want to be able to put these cards into cloud machines, cloud servers, in order to offload all the rendering, all the heavy load to the GPU rather than to the CPU. And the card that I have comes with 8 gig of memory. And if you start a virtual session, a virtual machine, and you remote into it, it only uses, if you only use one monitor, it only uses 80 meg of these 8 gig when you use RemoteFX. So that gives you an impression how many users you can get on one of those cards. And the idea is to accelerate the output of your remote applications or your remote desktop in a way that you could do could play games if the latency is not too large when you connect to your cloud provider. So this gives you an impression what the technology is able to do today. Now the question is, will the licensing catch up early enough? Good. I mean, this is just a picture of what we will be talking about. So integrating the application into a local desktop, no matter what the desktop is. And the question is always, is it going to be a Windows client or server version that runs in the back end? As I mentioned earlier, if we're using terminal server technology, remote desktop session host, or XenApp, it's server. If we're using Xen desktop or remote desktop virtualization host, I'm still struggling with that. Can I say VDI instead? Microsoft VDI and Microsoft Terminal Server, so that's much easier for everybody. So if you're using the VDI side of things, it's client versions of the Windows operating system. So that's the general thing. So this is our comparison list. So we will come back to that later. So the supported client platforms, how do you configure it, central management, the media types that are supported, and the media types that are not supported, which is interesting information that typically the vendor will not share with you. Monitoring and performance. So how good are these technologies when you compare Microsoft RemoteApp to Citrix Seamless Windows? Simple as that. I'm going to get started with the Microsoft side of things, and then I will hand over to Nico, and he's going to do the Citrix side of things. So this is how we decided we will well, distribute this session among the two of us. Good. I added this picture because Nico has beautiful pictures around the technology that he's going to present, so I thought I share with you how that all started. Many, many years ago, Microsoft called this technology that is terminal server and VDI today, they called it Hydra. And they started working on that on 96, and they acquired some of the Citrix technology in a year later, and then they built on top of some of the Citrix technology. So the kernel, the multi-user kernel originally comes from Citrix. Microsoft acquired that, and starting from 1998, they started building multi-user support and later VDI into the operating system. And as I said, later they decided to use a much more, I would say, boring name, because they called this Rail. And the funny thing is, when we're talking about seamless applications, remote applications integrated locally, a name that makes a lot of sense. But the acronym is not so spectacular, so no beautiful pictures. As a matter of fact, this is a picture from the UK. And, but you will find this Rail acronym still in the registry. If you search for Rail, if you search in articles on Microsoft MSDN or TechNet, you will still find that they refer to a technology called Rail. Whenever they say that, they mean RemoteApp. Marketing came up with RemoteApp. Development still uses Rail. So when we attend the MVP summits, because we're both Microsoft MVPs and Citrix CTPs, so when we attend Microsoft MVP meetings, the development still refers to Rail. They don't like RemoteApp as a name. And a simple setup for such an environment to publish applications is you need a remote desktop connection broker that does the brokerage when you connect to a remote desktop session host farm, to a terminal server farm. It's not very complicated to set up, in particular when we're talking about Server 2012. The thing is, how do you publish applications? This is a screenshot of Server 2008 R2 RemoteApp. It is like a complicated dialog box that allows you to publish individual applications. So the Rail front end, more or less. And the thing is that you had, with Server 2008 R2, you had to do this configuration for each individual server, which means the concept of a real farm does not exist with Server 2008 R2. And if you publish one application on one server, you have the option to export this configuration and then go to the next server and import it there. There was no way to sort of distribute that configuration to multiple servers. Yes, there is load balancing, because there is the connection broker. So the load balancing works with Server 2008 R2, no problem with that. But you have to make sure that you publish the same application on all servers. So let's assume that you have a farm of 20 servers. So you have to go through this process, well, one time initially, and then 19 times that you distribute it to the other servers. Very, very painful. The other thing was, how do you get the information out to the client that there is an application published? And with Server 2008 R2, there were two methods. You can create an MSI package. An MSI package does not include the real application. It includes the link to the application, so like how to remote into this application, plus it includes the icon. And MSI has the advantage that you can distribute it through a group policy. You just put it into a GPO, and on logon or whatever you want to assign it to, this application, MSI, is deployed, and it may populate the desktop, it may populate the start menu, so it's up to you. So you can put that into this MSI file. The alternative that you can use is RDP. The question is, why is there also RDP if there is MSI, which includes the icon? Because RDP is just a text file. It cannot include an icon because the icon is binary information. The answer was, Microsoft said, we also want to support non-Windows platforms. And if you want to deploy, well, the link to a remote app to a non-Windows platform, this platform most probably will not understand MSI. So we need to have something that is pure ASCII text that can be consumed on any other platform. So that was the very simple way of dealing with that. So you had these options. You had your server. You publish your application. You can push it out through group policy. Or you can simply just copy or send by email the MSI file or the RDP file. This is how it was done in Server 2008 R2. They also introduced with Server 2008 R2 that you are able to manage which user has access to which application. At the beginning, it was like you published applications, and every user who had access to this terminal server was also able to start this application. Now, if you had a more complex environment and you wanted to publish 200 applications, there was no way to select certain user groups and only give them access to 20 of those applications. So all users always had access to all apps, which means when you had a web front end, you populated the web front end with 200 apps, no matter how many of these apps the user was able to use, because you could have access control lists on each of the applications. So that means the user clicked the icon and then received the message, no, you cannot start this application. I mean, that was kind of disappointing for the users. The user experience was not very good. So what Microsoft did, they introduced a filtering mechanism. It allows you to filter to say, yes, I want to publish an application to a specific user group. The standard is publish it to everybody, but you can modify that in order to only have certain user groups having access to certain application sets. So that was introduced with Server 2008 R2. With Server 2012, I will just go very quickly through that because I want to show you that configuration in reality because I have a demo environment running here. So the same thing happening on Server 2012. As I said, going through that, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. I brought a HyperV environment with me. Let's just go here, show you what it's like. So it's a domain controller. We have a domain controller, an infrastructure server, 2 terminal servers, and 1 Windows 7 Service Pack 1 with all the patches that are required to run RemoteFX. Just to demonstrate that all this is all, so the RemoteFX stuff and the publishing of applications from Server 2012 is also possible on Windows 7, which may be interesting information for those of you who still want to maintain a Windows 7 environment and not migrate to Windows 8. So this is why I set it up that way. Good. So if I start my little RDP client, so you see the outline, how my infrastructure looks like. And I have opened access to all of these machines, so to the infrastructure server, to the terminal server number 1, and to the Win 7 machine. So the overview, who of you has worked with Server 2012? OK, so this may look familiar to those who work with Server 2012 because it gives you a nice overview of the infrastructure. Then we dig into the individual servers. So what you see here, that there are multiple servers that create a collection. This is the collection. Let's dig into that. You see it's a remote app programs collection called RDSH farm. There are 2 servers in this farm. It's RDSH1 and RDSH2. So pretty simple, not rocket science. The thing is, you go into the farm settings now, and there's one thing that I learned when I set up this environment. The name of the farm, no, the name of the collection equals the name of the farm. And the name of the farm is the one that you have to put into DNS to do the name resolution for the load balancer. So there's no documentation that says it really matters what name you give the collection. So make up your mind what the name of the collection is supposed to be, or the name of the farm is supposed to be, before you create the collection. So these are the little hoops that Microsoft wants us to jump through. And again, digging into that, what does it look like? We have this farm, and the farm has multiple applications published. If we go over there, you see that there are already some sessions. There's one open session, well, because I'm connected to the machine, and there are some disconnected sessions. But basically, this is the user interface to publish the individual applications. Now, let's interact with that. Let's go to one of those. Here, Server Manager allows you to do right clicks. Sometimes Server Manager doesn't. At this point, it does. So if we edit the properties of one published applications, you can see all these parameters. If I'm allowed to use command line parameters, here is the user assignment. So the filtering that I mentioned earlier, where you can decide, oh, I want to have this published applications only assigned to an AD group. So this is the place where you can do that. And you can do a file type association, meaning that if you run, if you double click a file with this extension on the client side, it automatically uses the remote app rather than the local app. So you modify the file type association on your client if you do that, if you deploy it in the right way. So this is how you modify individual apps. If you create a new one, you go to Task and publish a remote app program. And that's the stuff that you also find in the slide deck. So the screenshots, this is exactly how I publish those. If you cannot find your application in this list, you go to Add, and it lets you browse through the first server of your farm. And this is something that you have to be aware of. Again, verify that the program is installed on all the RD session host servers. So the difference is that now with Server 2012, I do not configure individual machines. I use one machine as my blueprint and configure this one machine, but it is reflected to all other machines. So there is no need, if I have a farm with 20 servers, to deploy the configuration of remote app to the other 19 servers. This is done automatically. However, if the application does not exist on server number 10 and load balancer decides to send the user to server number 10, the user will get an error message. Cannot find this application. So this is why the statement here is very clear. Make sure that all your servers are identical. This is what Microsoft suggests. If you want to have different application sets installed on different servers, you have to create multiple collections, multiple farms. So that is the idea to configure all that. To be very clear, configuration of remote app is painful. It is. I mean, Server Manager, to me, it looks like not even a 1.0 version. Because if you expect that everything can be managed through Server Manager, cancel. Are you sure? Yes. If you look at the number of tools, and all these tools are still the good old MMC plugin tools. So over time, I would expect that all these tools will be moved into Server Manager. But as of today, basically only terminal services can be managed completely through Server Manager. So I have the feeling this terminal server group, they are again the guinea pigs for Microsoft, trying out, oh, how far can we go with changing the management user interface, the management experience. OK, so this is how you configure everything. So now we have 4 applications published. And there's another thing to note. If you have not published any application, you will find the desktop in here. Because the standard setting is, well, the desktop is deployed or provided through the farm. As soon as you configure your first remote app, the desktop disappears. So there's no published desktop anymore. You would expect that you can choose either to connect to a desktop or connect to remote app. No, it's an either or from the user interface perspective. When we were at the MVP Summit, we asked Microsoft, why have you done that? And they said, this is very simple. If you have a VDI environment, we're talking about Windows clients, and there's only one session, one remote session that can be opened on a Windows client, meaning that if you connect to a remote desktop, you cannot connect to a remote app on the same machine, and vice versa. And we said, yeah, okay, but you can do that on a terminal server. And they said, no, no, no. We wanted to make everything look equal. For us, the difference between VDI and TS does not exist anymore. Okay, so you're limiting the functionality of your terminal server deployment because you have limitations on the client side. And I said, yes, it's just combining the features, and all those features that are not available on one of the platforms didn't make it into the UI. So in reality, you can connect to a desktop if you know what the farm name is, and you use your RDP client and just connect to the desktop, even though you have applications published. This works. Good. Now let's go and see the experience on the client side. This is the portal on Windows 7. Let's log in. And now it's going to think a while, and I have no idea why, because it's a, you saw it, it's a fairly standard infrastructure. Yes, I do not have any certificates deployed here. That is the only thing that I have not done. But now we are here, and you see here, connected to remote app and desktop connection. I will explain a little later what this is. But what you see here is we have all the published applications, but not a published desktop anymore. If I wanted to connect to a complete, full desktop, I would need to go through this. So I cannot give my user an icon on the portal. I don't think this is a smart idea. But this is how Microsoft decided to do it. Now, I could start some fairly simple programs, but I thought I want to start something that is a little bit more complicated. I want to start Server Manager. And it will take a while, and then suddenly even Server Manager will pop up as a remote app, as a seamless application, which is, well, for those of you who use Citrix, not a big surprise. So this will come up eventually. Now, coming back to what I said earlier with the toast that just showed up, this is the way you can configure your system, your client, that it uses a web feed. So we will go back to the slide deck very soon. And the web feed allows you to get the information about which applications are published. And you will find this tool in, oh, here we go. You find this configuration in Control Panel. Who of you has ever used that? So many. Wow. Now, how did you like the user experience?
I think it's a good thing. I love this tool, but what I hated was that the user can do an MSTSC and open all the
Yes.
stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a thing that's not so restrictive as Citrix is.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are some other things which I'm messing with.
Yeah, so the answer was, yeah, it's a nice tool. It's a good idea. But, well, sort of the user experience is not in a stage as it should be. And it's hard to find. Most people don't even know that it exists. And you've seen the portal, and this technology is coupled. So also the web portal uses the web feeds for obvious reasons. And the same thing is for this Control Panel tool. So you can sort of subscribe with a Windows-style application to the terminal server infrastructure, and it will tell you if there are new applications published if the user presses refresh. So it's not automatically refreshed, and it is not controllable in a way as you can do it from Citrix. Absolutely. So just going back to the slide deck to go through these things, So here is the information about the web feed, just for you if you want to use the web feed in your own web page. This is the remote app and desktop connection, as I said, available in the control panel. This is what it looks like. And you see, this is the way how they populate this dialog box of what's available for you and what's not. And in the properties, if you click properties, there's the refresh button. So you need to educate your user in a 90-minute training how to use this tool. So it's there. It's all there. And the other thing is, how does it work under the hood? And under the hood, pretty much like Citrix does it, Microsoft replaces the shell. So what they do is they have a dedicated seamless shell. With Citrix, that's WF shell. At Microsoft, it's RDP shell.exe. But typically, you will not see RDP shells so easily because there are more processes that are involved. Because the RDP init sequence that initializes full remote desktops, the user init loads RDP init. So user init is responsible for initializing the user. So the user init loads RDP init, and RDP init launches RDP exe. And RDP init is like a watchdog that finds out what's going on behind the scenes, while RDP shell loads a bunch of Windows event hooks so that it hooks into the system because it replaces the Explorer shell. There are issues, pretty much like Citrix has the issues. Sometimes you have processes that are still up and running, even though there is no graphical user interface. If they are still there, the session will never terminate. Because, well, RDP session still thinks, hey, there's something going on. I cannot terminate the session. So you can configure such applications in the registry to make sure that your session terminates properly. If you really centralize everything, you have this RDP web access, and you can connect, as I said earlier, either to terminal server or VDI infrastructure. For Microsoft, it just doesn't make any difference anymore. And that's the good news. But you can see it's not so simple to set up a complete environment. And you cannot use Server Manager to guide you through the entire process. You have seen the TS Web Access. Well, you have seen the newer version. So you see how it evolved over time. It still looks pretty much the same. It's a bit more, it's a little bit nicer than it was before, but not really beautiful if you compare to other portals. You can develop your own, but it's hard to find all the information how to use the web feeds. So you'll find many articles in the forums. Now, as a final thing that I want to share with you before I hand over to Nico is there a way you can manually configure remote apps? And yes, you can do that. You can activate remote app on Windows 7 or on Windows 8. And these are the steps to do that. I don't want to read this to you. You can get the slide decks. It's a very simple manual process. You go to the registry. You do this. And you create your own RDP file. And if the full RDP file is configured, it looks like that. And I just want to show you what it looks like. Let's go back here. We have this Windows 8 test server, and you see here's the registry. So I actually configured a couple of applications. This Windows 8 machine is not connected to a domain. It's not connected to my terminal server infrastructure, to my demo infrastructure. It's just a standalone machine, a virtual machine that runs on this box here. Nothing else. And I went to the registry, made this configuration changes, and now I want to show you what happens if I want to use that without terminating the session here. So I go to my local Explorer, and you see I created some RDP files manually. You see there's no real icon for the applications. Now I want to start Notepad. Double click Notepad, show me the details. Aha! And now it says you cannot log on. There's another user there. So this is the effect that Microsoft described. You cannot use a full desktop and the remote app programs at the same time when connecting to a Win 7 machine. So now I say, But still, I want to connect. Yes, I want it. And when I tried that out at home, I was sitting there and thought, what's going to happen? What I forgot is you have to go back to the original machine because I was the primary user here. And it waits for the timeout, 30 seconds. If I do not accept, yeah, there's another user and I want to let him in, okay. Now I terminate this session and you see, Notepad was there immediately. So now I have a remote app that replaces the remote desktop, but they cannot run at the same time. So always keep in mind, do not configure through the full desktop and expect that you can remote into one of the applications that run on this machine. So when I ran into that kind of issue, I thought, what can I do to still configure stuff? So I said I want to have Task Manager that I'm able to start. I can start Task Manager as a remote app. And within Task Manager, what I can do is I can run a new task. I can run regedit. If I run regedit, I get the message, hey, you know that you need to be an administrator to do that? I say, yeah, I know. OK, let's do it. Here we go. Now we have a remote app, regedit, which allows me to modify the settings of my Windows 8 machine. And so I would be able to create more published applications on that, even though I don't have the desktop open. Now the question is, how good is performance when I use this technology? This uses RemoteFX to communicate. So let's launch a couple of apps that use substantially more resources. So I want to start Rollercoaster, which is an application that Sean and I are using to do remoting protocol testing. So you see it generates like, 10, 12, 14, 15 pictures, frames per second, which is not bad. So it uses the soft GPU, so it uses the rendering of the CPU because I have a laptop here. I don't have the high-end graphics card in here that allows me to use vGPU. And in such a scenario, I cannot use the virtual GPU. It's impossible from a Microsoft perspective. And I could start stuff like the Seascooter demo. And if you run that, that's an OpenGL demo. So you can also see, yeah, it's pretty good. It's usable. If I stop play, and I say, I want to interact with it, stop play. If it would allow me to stop play, well, sometimes the interaction is a little bit tough. Yeah. Hello? No, it wants to play this. Good. Let's go back to the final thing. How good is video? And what I did here is, and I need the volume to go up so that you can hear it. If I run a video high def, is it synchronized? Yes, it is. So performance is really good. So I'm running this Win8 VM in the background, have a published application, media player. It does its job. OK, so that gives you an impression. Yeah, performance is not bad. Let's go back to the final slide of my part of the deck. Are there challenges? Yes, there are. So if you go to the forums, you will find many of those challenges. Set order of dialog boxes are not appropriate. In particular, in Dynamics, a Microsoft program, what happens is that pop-ups are behind the main window. Pop-ups asking users for information are behind the main window, and users cannot interact with the main window anymore before they answered the question in the pop-up and said accept. Unfortunately, the user cannot see the pop-up. And this creates a major problem in production environments. Move and resize experience is not the best. Thumbnails. So if we look down here, you see the thumbnails here. They are not really application thumbnails, like local applications. So all this information is not injected here. The other thing that you will see, if you start moving the app, you see this black thing around the window. always when I start moving. So ugly. So, and I cannot do a full drag. While for the local applications, I can do full drag. I cannot do that with the remote app programs. So there are differences. There are shortcomings. Click once does not work. Rotation and resolution adoption on tablets does not work properly. So there are still things to be done. OK, this is the point where I hand it over to Nico.
Yep. Let me do some quick configuration changes here. Oh, perfect. So let's come to the Citrix part of it. First of all, I want to do a quick introduction of the Citrix world as a whole. I think most of you might know. How many of you are using Citrix products, by the way?
OK, OK, that's everybody.
Just to compare it, how many are using Microsoft-only solutions?
Come on.
OK, I won, so.
Huh.
OK.
Who wants to use Microsoft only? Still a minority.
OK. As you all know, and actually you all know, as we have seen, Citrix technology is based on Microsoft technology. So all we do in remoting technology, using terminal services, using VDI, whatever, is using Microsoft operating systems and is relying on Microsoft technology. So basically everything we have as a deployment scenarios, as licensing scenarios, as configuration issues, most of it also is the fact for Citrix deployments. So if you look at, for example, limitations for processes, memory consumption, I/O, as Brian mentioned in the keynote this morning, all this is true for Citrix and Microsoft as well. But if we are going to the Citrix part of it a little bit more, then we see that Citrix is adding huge possibilities to the Microsoft part. When Benny showed me the demos, to be honest, I'm really impressed what Microsoft is doing with terminal services and VDI. But there are such flaws in some parts for the configuration. Here you have to do things manually. Here you can automate it. Here you have no control mechanisms or monitoring mechanisms. So this is, these are parts where Citrix is adding functionality. And this is what we want to have a look at. I don't want to compare the protocols in specific, because I think the difference between the protocols are getting thinner and thinner. Or it's not.
Not so important anymore.
Not so important anymore. So, yeah, coming to Citrix. The interesting part is, if you, I think you're all aware of it, next week will be the Synergy in Anaheim. How many of you will be there? OK, a couple of you. So, which product am I going to talk about? MetaFrame? No. Presentation server? No. I think the only product I can talk about right now is Avalon, or especially Excalibur. The tech preview has been out for like 4 months or 5 months. I'm not sure about it. Who downloaded it? Who installed it? Who made it work? OK, it's pretty funny in this order. So when I downloaded and installed it and Googled it or Binged it and searched for some things, it's mainly like this. You know, it's like kind of the information desert. You have some blog articles about how cool it is, but if you look for technical specifications, if you look for details and configuration or so, it's mainly empty space. But we all know, right in the middle of it, there might be this magic sword. The only problem is to get it out of the stone, and that's mainly what we're trying to do in this presentation. So I will be focusing on the technology preview of Excalibur. So this is a tech preview. It's not a final product. There might be some things changing in the upcoming versions or in the final version. I don't know. But that's the thing I will be showing you. So first of all, high-level overview. Actually, what Citrix is doing with Excalibur is evolving the infrastructure components we have seen in ZenDesktop, and also some of the concepts we have seen in ZenApp, like for example the concepts of having controllers on the one side and having agents, or in former versions they were called workers, on the other side. Controllers in this part is the delivery controller, so it's kind of the new version of the ZenDesktop delivery controller we have in the ZenDesktop versions. And on the other side, we have delivery agents, formerly called VDAs, for VMs like Windows 7, Windows 8, physical devices, and what's new in Excalibur is also for remote desktop session hosts. So it's the same architecture for session hosts as for VDI environments as well. So all you have to do is to deploy an agent to your target devices, and then they are able to be controlled by the delivery controller, the client, and you have clients like Citrix receiver for mainly or mostly all operating systems, is able to connect to the delivery controller using Storefront. We'll see that a little later. Get the list of the applications or desktops they are allowed to use, and then connect directly using ICA or HDX to the agents. If you look at the component install, it's pretty streamlined from my point of view. So if you download the DVD and insert it into your server machine, you have, first of all, the decision, what do we want to install? Do you want to install the controller component or the agents? If it's the controller, it will install all of the components. It's possible to install all of the components that are included, like Storefront, database, licensing, and so on and so on. We'll see that a little later. Or if you're on the agent side, you will be able to choose between delivery agent for server operating systems or for client operating systems. So that's what I said before. There's no more difference between terminal services or VDI. It's all the same kind of architecture that will be used here. As I said, if you do the controller install, the delivery controller itself, the management consoles like Studio, like Director, licensing, and so on, Storefront can be installed all in one step. You can separate it on different machines. If you do the lightweight installation, like for example this demoing purposes, you can install it all in one machine. And the really, really cool thing is it's completely automated. So all the prerequisites are included in the image. All the roles that are needed are installed automatically. So not like, I think it's what's Presentation Server 3, where it says, oh, you need Java runtime, you need this, and you need that, download it here, blah, 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 blah. No, just click next, 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 and then the delivery controller will be installed. And starting Studio, we'll be able to configure it. We'll do it later. Same on the agent side. Also here you're able to decide what do you want to do. Do you want to install it on the target machine, like the VM, for example, or you do want to create an image for PVS, for MCS. If you want to install it on a direct machine, it's the same. I'm sorry. I'm missing one slide. Never mind. Give it the address of the controller. Installs all the components, doing optimization, like for example monitoring remote systems, optimizations of memory, and so on. And also here all the prerequisites are installed automatically. What we have after all this installation is this architecture. So from left to right, you have the user on the one hand side. The user is connecting using Storefront, authenticating on the Storefront front end. Storefront front end is communicating with the delivery controller, and the delivery controller is connected to licensing, to your hosting operating system. We all do it live later on. And to Active Directory for authentication purposes. And the delivery agents as well is basically the same architecture as in ZenDesktop. Is using Active Directory for authentication to the delivery controller and the web service to register to the catalogs. If you go a little deeper into the architecture, it's only for reference. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's basically the same architecture as we had in ZenDesktop. I'm not quite sure about all of these components in the tech preview, but basically it should be the same as in a Zen desktop. So we have different services on the controller side, responsible for communication with the hosting architecture, responsible for communication with the services for the virtual machines, and as well for machine creation service, Active Directory, machine management, and so on and so on. On the client side, Benny mentioned before the shell extensions. So we had the WF shell on the terminal server side. In the desktop environments, we usually have the PK shell for the port EK protocol used on the desktop. And that's pretty much the same in Excalibur as well. Coming to management, one of the main ideas or the main parts in management an Excalibur environment is to have one console, to be able to configure all your resources within one console, and to delegate administration or to delegate access using so-called catalogs and desktop groups and applications. So if you start from the logical side, on the one hand, you have your agents. So these are the worker machines. You can't see it completely on the left. So this might be, for example, Windows 8 machines. These might be Windows 2008 R2 remote desktop session hosts. These might be 2012 remote desktop session hosts. These can be physical machines, virtual machines, machine creation service, provisions using PVS, whatever. And after you have created these machines, you can use catalogs to group them. So, for example, you can create for all your Windows 8 machines a virtual machine catalog where you add all your Windows 8 machines into this one catalog to group them and to set, for example, the configuration type, like is it a streamed, is it an MCS image, and so on and so on. The same way you can use for remote desktop session hosts. So you can create a remote desktop session host catalog, add all your Windows 2008 R2 machines to this, or if you want to, you can even add 2012 machines to the same catalog or create a different catalog. Which kind of catalog you create and what kind of machines you add is mainly important for the next step. So for the creation of the desktop groups, so, or to call it another way, for the assignments, how do you want to assign your resources to your users? Do you want them to assign them directly, or do you want to assign them, we'll see that in a moment, through applications? You create a desktop group, like for example, you can create a desktop group called Desktop Advanced, which is filled with the machines included in the VM catalog, or you can create a Desktop Standard group where you add your machines from the remote desktop session host catalog. If you want to, it's also possible to mix up at this part for desktop groups. So if you want to provide a desktop image or a virtualized desktop, you can mix and match the way you want to. The important part is if you want to publish applications, so like we did in the Microsoft part with RemoteApp, there's a special group type you have to use at this stage. It's called Application Desktop Group. And if you use that part, you can later on create published applications which are referring to the desktop group at this stage. So it's completely different as we did before in ZenApp and ZenDesktop. In ZenDesktop, we kind of stopped at this part. And right now in Excalibur, we are able to do application publishing pretty much the way we did it in ZenApp, but referring to desktop groups. OK. I have a couple of slides here for this, but I'll show this in live. So what I have here is the Citrix Studio of the Excalibur environment. We do a complete configuration of all I have shown before. So how many have seen the console? I hope all that installed it. OK. So what we have here is a MSC console. Starting from the back end, you have your hosting infrastructure. In my case, this is Citrix Zen Server. You can see the controllers. I have one controller in this environment. It is called NL Excalibur 01. And in the upper part of the console, you configure your machines, which is your catalogs. You can configure the assignments. These are the desktop groups. And you can configure the applications, so the applications you want to publish to the users. Let's start with the machines. First step is to create a catalog. And then you will be asked, what kind of catalog do you want to create? Do you want to create a catalog for remote desktop session hosts, so for server operating systems, or do you want to create a catalog for desktop operating systems, which will be VDI? Let's start with the server operating system, which could be 2008 R2 or 2012. The next step or next decision you can make is, do you want to create it for virtual machines or for physical machines? If it's physical, there will be no possibilities for deployment, configuration, automatization, and so on and so on. If you use virtual machines, in the next step you will be asked for machine management, how are they provisioned, and so on and so on. We use virtual machines at this step. So as you see, for server images, MCS is not available, at least not in the tech preview. But you can choose, for example, to use PVS, like perhaps you do already in your XenApp environments. Or you can say you use another service or technology that might be existing images. In my case, I've installed images, so I can choose this part to use currently existing VMs. Next step, as you might know from Zen Desktop, is to add your VMs. So you can browse through your hosting infrastructure. And choose, for example, session host 1 and 2. Enter the computer accounts. So, in the final step you have to do is to give the catalog a name. This could be, for example, Win 2012 RDSH, or a description. These are Windows 2012 Remote Desktop Session Hosts. And click Finish. And then you have created your first catalog. It's pretty much the same for desktop operating systems. So let's go through this real quick. You can choose between random desktops or static, like install desktops if you have a personal VM. Also here, choose the VM. So we've completed the first step, create catalogs for session hosts and for virtual desktops. The next thing to do is to assign the members of these catalogs, so the servers or the virtual machines, to users. We are using this by going to assignments. Assignments, it's the same as the desktop group in this case. So we can right-click here and say we want to create a desktop group. And what's really important, the other possibility is to create an application desktop group. So if you go through the dialogues are pretty much the same. The difference is completely, it's completely different what comes out, because if you're saying you want to create only a desktop group, you cannot use this desktop group to publish applications through it. So if you want to publish applications, you have to use the application desktop group. And in this step, you are able to choose between the catalogs we created before, like, for example, the session host or the VDI. In this case, we use the session host. Add the two hosts. Next step is to decide how to handle your profile management. Do you want to manage it on your own using some profile management solution, or do you want to use Citrix profile management? We do it on our own. And we have a desktop group called Win 2012 app. As you see, until this part, or until this step, it's the same as we do on Zen Desktop, kindly and some difference in the dialog boxes. But up to now, it's like creating desktop groups in Zen Desktop. The interesting steps follow if you go to applications. Here is where, so-called the new Zen app comes in. You can say you want to add an application. And the first decision you have to make is to which desktop group you want to use for this. You can add an existing, you can create a new from this dialog. If you say add existing, you see the 2012 app desktop group is available here, so you can choose it. Click Next. And decide which application you want to use, like, for example, the calculator. Then, which user should be able to use it? I'm sorry, it's the German environment, but I choose the domain users. Where do you want the shortcuts to be created? It's pretty much the same as in XenApp. So on the client folder, to the client start menu, to the client desktop, whatever. Then advanced configuration, like, for example, how do you want the appearance to be? I like the way this dialog is configured. It's by far better than in XenApp with all these different tabs and so. But you can, for example, reduce the color and so on and so on. Calculator. With your settings. And OK. So as you see, we have published application calculator, published application notepad. It was existing before. What did we do until this step? We created the virtual machines, the agents. We created catalogs. We created a desktop group. And we published the application. Compared to XenApp, what's the functionality we used in this desktop group space to automate or to streamline the application publishing? It's pretty much the new version of the worker group. In XenApp, you had worker groups. You were able to use Active Directory OUs to group your server objects and to publish applications to these worker groups. Here, you are using the catalogs for this, or the desktop groups for this. That's pretty much the reference you can take here. What's pretty interesting? What's pretty interesting? So I think so far that should be clear. What's pretty interesting is a new feature that I like pretty much from the scalability point of view is if you look at the administrative possibilities we have here. As Benny had said before, it's complicated to create security in a complete Microsoft environment using RemoteApp. Here it's different. As you see, we can publish the application to users, to groups, to whatever. But also on the administrative side, we can create administrators, we can create roles, and what's new here is we can create scopes. So all you have on the left side, all your catalogs, your applications, your desktop groups can be grouped in scopes, and you can assign permissions based on scopes. So if you're, for example, talking about a multi-tenancy environment, you are able to have different base images, different ways of provision your agents, and then group them by scopes and assign permissions to these scopes to delegate administrative possibilities. Let me show this real quick. So you can, for example, create my scope. And here you see all the stuff we created before, like your desktop groups, your catalogs. Let me choose these. And afterwards, if you add a new administrator, you're here able to choose the scope in which the administrator should have the permissions you want to have. So I think that's a pretty cool concept to scale out your environment. I'm running a little out of time, so. So, as you've seen, we created published applications. How do you access them? Oh, I'm sorry. How are you able to monitor them? I showed you Citrix Studio. Same as Citrix Director. It's pretty much the new version of the directory you know from Zen Desktop. You can log on with your administrative credentials, search for the user you want to monitor or you want to manage, and it will show you the session information, which catalogs are the, which desktop groups, which application is the user allowed to use, and then manage it. Access to the applications, Citrix Storefront. It's, yeah, I call it the new web interface, but that's not really true. So what you have is a web-based possibility to your applications. It's also the point of contact for the receiver if installed locally. The cool thing is if you want to use, for example, HTML5 or you have different client operating systems, a receiver is the point of access for all of this. As mentioned at the beginning, from my point of view, the big difference between the Microsoft world and the Citrix world is the manageability and the scalability. Like, for example, having these catalogs, having the scopes for administrative permissions. It's really optimized for big deployments. If you look at the automated install possibilities of the image management, I don't think I have to talk about it that much, MCS, PVS, and so on and so on. And for example, or mainly the part of the multi-tenancy, that's where Citrix comes in from my point of view, and where Citrix still will have its big future. Are there any challenges? Yeah, mainly one from my point of view. The architecture might be really, really complex. So depending on how big your deployment will be or how large your deployment will be, it might be really complex to implement it and to maintain it. All the other things, it's still a tech preview, so let's wait for the next couple of weeks, and we'll see what the final product will bring.
Good.
Okay.
Let's get to the results. Wrap up. Last 5 minutes. Let's see the result. So the result is pretty simple. Like Nico already said, on the Microsoft side, monitoring and scalability and management is not a smooth experience. I mean, if you look at the configuration, I'm using Server Manager and I use the registry. I used registry hacks to do stuff. Yes, it can be done through Server Manager, but if you want to do the real sophisticated stuff, you have to use PowerShell, you have to use registry hacks. It's still not there where we want it to be. It's still not enterprise ready. from a management perspective, to be very, very clear, which is very different on the Citrix side. Even if it's a tech preview, it's very clear that it's much more sophisticated when it comes to management and scalability. When it comes to the supported media types, RemoteFX is great for these typical Microsoft media types. However, if you want to do OpenGL, if you expect stuff like flash redirection, it's not available. You don't get that through RemoteFX, even though you have this high-end GPUs sitting on your server. I'm seriously hoping that Microsoft will be able to improve this in the near future, because the potential is there. RemoteFX as a protocol is great. It comes from a performance perspective when you're using, I mean, you have seen that in the demo, when you're using the right media types, performance is great. But as soon as you have an OpenGL application that was developed after 2000, it most probably will use OpenGL 1.2 and later. And it is not compatible to RemoteFX. You will get an error message that says, no, this graphic subsystem is not supported. So it's very disappointing if you invested a lot of money into that. So I completely agree with Nico on that yeah, protocol, when it comes to the standard media types, they are almost head-to-head. So RemoteFX comes very close to HDX and HDX 3D Pro. Sometimes RemoteFX is even better with certain aspects of media types. But the management is really, really painful. So I mean, for simple things like creating a farms that you have to go and search the web how to create a collection with the right name. So that was like half hour or hour to find that out. So you go through the steps and you think, aha, I've gone through the wizard. But unfortunately, there's still no farm and there's no load balancing, because I have to populate stuff in DNS manually. I have to make sure that I select the right collection name and all that stuff. So there are so many things that you have to keep in mind when you're using Microsoft. If I compare that to Citrix, it's straightforward. If you configure it, in the end, you have the very good end-to-end experience. So this is what we sort of have as a result here. Yep. Anything that you want to add?
Yeah, perhaps some last words, famous last words. I think the main part is this one. You have to know your apps. So coming to, for example, imaging technologies. Imaging is great, and it's really working. But on customer side, I really often run into applications which need license activation based on some hardware stuff, online activation, blah, 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 whatever. Microsoft is doing a great job using KMS in this part. But if you're going to different software vendors, it's often complicated to activate your software, your apps, using images, especially if you're using read-only images. So this is one important part we have to take an eye on, have to take care of. And on the other hand, as I said before, the infrastructures on the Microsoft and on the Citrix side might be really complex. So spend some time on the planning, not just include or insert the ISO and then install, but spend some time on the planning.
Good. Are there any questions?
Things are on the Citrix side. Things like the zones, the database, local host cache, is that still all present, or is that all gone?
The question was, is there still a local host cache and, and zones and stuff like that? Is it still available?
Yeah. So if you look at the architecture, Excalibur is the follower of the Zen desktop line. Yeah. So all this IMA stuff is gone, and it's complete Zen desktop architecture. Yeah. So no local host cache and so on.
What desktop clients are supported in that?
Pardon?
What desktop
The clients.
Yeah.
We can you go back to that one? Because we had the clients. That was on the list as well. The question was around what clients are supported on the Citrix side.
Yeah. So pretty much everything. So you have receiver for I think 99% of the mobile platforms, Windows, Mac, and so on. The important part is that not all the clients are feature equal. So the best experience is on Windows. A pretty good experience is on Mac, iOS. And if you go to like this HTML5 or so, it might be okay, but it's definitely not feature equal.
On the Microsoft side, it's all feature equal, but you can only get the client for Windows.
Windows 7 and Windows 8?
XP?
I'm not quite sure about XP. You can?
You can? Okay.
What you can do is 2003 terminal servers. So in a remote desktop session host, it's only 2008 and up, and no 2003. Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah, I'm missing a line called reporting. We have for Citrix this nice tool called Tritsch, which is playing in my ass. And from Microsoft, I found nothing. What is the future in Citrix, and what is coming up with Microsoft, or is there nothing?
The question was, what about reporting? And to be honest, I don't know what they really want to do on the Microsoft side, because they have some functionality in Server Manager, but it's very rudimentary, to be very clear. And you cannot write logs and stuff and analyze it. So I don't really see something coming up, except if you start using System Center. So Microsoft will always refer you, and this is why I also wrote it in the comparison. Yeah, use System Center for everything for the management in the background.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty much the same on the Citrix side. So Citrix has its own tools for monitoring and so on and so on. But if you look at the hints you sometimes get, I think it's going to be Ops Manager and management packs for Ops Manager. Yeah.
So that's going to be the dominating monitoring things of the future, obviously. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.